First or last or the...
Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. We'll start with the roll call. Mrs. Welker? Here. Mr. Cruz?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mrs. Petrie?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Good?
Here.
Mrs. Tree? Here. Okay, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll stand. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we need to have a show of hands of those of you that approve the work session agenda for this evening.
As presented.
But we need to make a motion first.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of accepting the agenda as presented? Raise your hand. All right. Very good. Okay, tonight's work session is to focus on considering a new policy for students. It's ACAE. We have been given a couple of copies of proposed policies from MSBA. There's two versions from MSBA, actually. And I know we've been given a few other pieces of things here and there that people have submitted. So tonight we're going to discuss and hear your thoughts and try to get a formal direction and wording on this policy. Any thoughts or suggestions as to your feelings or how you want to, where you want to start?
My personal opinion, we take version 1 and throw it away. Because it's too liberal.
It is pretty liberal.
That's
I will
my
agree
personal opinion.
that it's
I
liberal.
say accept.
Number 1?
That's the pink one. Oh, you agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much so.
Fix that one.
Absolutely.
Way too liberal.
Okay. Very
Good
good.
start.
Keep going. You're doing good.
Well, we had given,
Made some notes.
I'm gonna say, we had a copy of both Grandview and DeSoto's, and they're very
Right.
close. I also suggest we kind of pitch Grandview's because, to me, it was a little bit too restrictive. I think that we should consider like a case-on-case base, and that was not included in theirs. And DeSoto and Grandview's is pretty much the same, which I'm assuming this one that is the one that you just gave us, Derek, is that the same as this one?
No.
No.
The student physical privacy policy?
It
I
may-
had this and I assumed that this one was from the ADF.
Yes, that's what I handed out was the.
Okay, because mine had like 2 pages to it.
Well, I just shortened it, so it was,
Okay.
I didn't change the word.
So it's the same
It's the
thing.
same thing.
So what part of it do you think is too restrictive?
It didn't have, let me go to my notes. The consideration of a case by case that even, whereas the one that we've been given from DeSoto had included, like on page 2 of the DeSoto, it says in shower room, locker room, each such request would be considered on a case by case. That even if we are very conservative and restrictive, I still think that we need to have the option of certain circumstances are going to.
Well, you never know what's
Because you don't want to
going to
hamstring
occur.
yourself by
Right,
not having
right.
that option.
So that's why I had personally kind of folded that one in half and hadn't looked at it anymore. I had it kind of narrowed down between MSBA's version 2 and DeSoto's and the ADF one.
So would you like to start maybe at the beginning of version 2 and kind of go through, look at paragraphs of it and discuss wording, or
Let me throw a couple things out.
talk
Just-
about yours?
Let me throw some general thoughts out. first, if you
Okay,
don't mind.
that'd be fun.
And I know several of you have heard me talk about or mention, and I think that the term that I used was facility use policy instead of transgender student policy. But what I came back around to was that ADF policy that I handed out tonight, and that although it doesn't say facilities use, it's about student physical privacy instead of carving out rules for a special group of our students. I just don't like that. In my mind, when you start making special rules for special groups, that's the definition of an equal protection problem. So I looked at, stuff from all over the country, made a lot of it available on the internet, just policies and decisions and stuff from some of the court cases, and I kept coming back to the protection of all of our students' physical privacy. Now, and I like option 1. What I handed you showed the 2 options, with option 2 just struck through, just for discussion purposes. But let's talk about what it doesn't address, because a lot of these other policies address things that this policy doesn't address. Things like student records, name and pronoun use. Those are things that I still think it's a good idea for us to consider having in policy and how we handle it. But again, my preference is not to do a transgender student policy, but we have a policy, I think it's JO, which is student records policy. And I don't see why there's any reason that the appropriate paragraphs from the MSBA versions 1 and 2 are the same, actually, these parts, but the appropriate sections on records, and maybe even, I wasn't sure where names and pronouns would fit in the records portion, but that the records, and then even before that, I think there's a section about consultation with parents, guardians, and students. I think those are good things for us to consider, to have included in policy. Again, I just don't want to put it in a policy about specific types of students. I think it should be there for the protection of all students. And so I thought that a place to start with some of that might be in policy JO. So those were my general thoughts about those policies and maybe where we would put things.
So you're suggesting the names and pronoun usage and the record issue be in a different policy. Is that what your
Yes.
suggestion is? And you called it JO?
I think it's JO.
We're going to pull it up right now.
Okay.
Starting next week, everyone can take a look at it.
And I've got everything on here too.
So that would address that need no matter what the situation was?
Right.
I think that's a great idea.
I don't have a problem with that. Because one of the policies that I read talked about you only get one name change per
Yes.
year.
Right. I had highlighted
And I'm
that
like,
too.
well, how many times are you gonna change your name?
Well,
But I guess,
Lisa,
But-
I'm sorry. Just, and we don't have to discuss it right now, but so I tell you what that other thing I handed out was, just so everyone knows what they've got in front of them. That is a memo that was drafted in part by ADF attorneys. And in full disclosure, I am now an affiliated ADF attorney. But this was drafted by some of their experts with regards to Title IX funding for everybody's benefit, to understand kind of that process a little bit better. So, and again, I wasn't trying to get us off topic on that, but I wanted to know what you had.
okay.
For the record, what is ADF?
The Alliance Defending Freedom.
and as I glanced over what Derek had handed us, this is an expanded version of the night that I referred to as the meeting from hell. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. And this was some of the information that I was sharing with all of you, and Celinda kind of cut it short. So she kind of got to I got to the point where the 40 years there hadn't been really withholding of funds, and that's when she kind of stopped and intervened and interfered with some of this information. So I think we should look at this more closely.
And what, the memorandum page, is that what you're talking
Yes.
about?
That is the legal aspect.
Okay.
Again, I wasn't trying to get stuff on that, but I can cover that whenever you guys want, if you have
Okay.
questions or whatever. And I think I brought Charles something handout, so everybody has copies of those things too.
Of your handouts that you
Yes.
gave us? Okay.
And I've got them on here too.
Okay. So, can we scroll through that JO policy and just kind of glance through it? Oh, he's getting it for us. Sorry.
Other one down. He's writing miles wrong key.
In case you have to juggle later.
I'm trying to get it on one page,
So,
it
yeah.
might be so small you can't read it. Let's try that. Is that, can everyone see that? I'll try to shrink it where we can get everything on one page.
These are just student records.
All right, so basically, student records, how student records will be kept, definition of eligible students, aligns with FERPA, Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. People that are eligible to review student records, health information, things of that nature. Directory, what will be disclosed in a directory for whether it be your yearbooks or publications of such. The messenger that we send out gives specific information about what is directory information to parents, limited directory information, things that we will not give out. Law enforcement access basically says law enforcement has access to directory information. If the juvenile officer comes up and wants student's name, address, birth date, that's information we will work with law enforcement. Children's Division, again, Children's Division has questions to access educational records in accordance with the law. And military and higher education access, meaning if someone is being recruited to the armed forces, we'll give information to the armed forces recruiter, as well as any college or secondary institution that wants information to contact, names, addresses to send out, for lack of a better word, propaganda or information about their institution, universities. So that's basically what the JO policy entails.
And looking at that, can you have a paragraph titled amendment to records or something?
Well, this just talks about records in general.
That's what can be changed.
I think you could, I don't know that you can
Thank
title
you.
it amendment for records, but I think you could put, this is where that information can be changed. It has all the state statutes below, as well as federal references. And one thing that we have to be careful of, if you look on down, you'll see policy references. If you vote or wish to change something in this policy, you'll need to make sure it doesn't contradict any one of these policies in here. But it's doable. We just need to make sure with MSBA, whatever you choose to do, we send it down and make sure it's all up to date.
And I couldn't find another policy where it seemed like the record stuff fit.
Yes.
And I didn't see anything where, if you're looking at the ACA from MSBA specifically talking about the subsection entitled records. I didn't see, I want somebody to review it more thoroughly, but I didn't see where that was an issue or anything.
Well, you can, as a board, draft a totally different
Right.
policy. You can use their title, AC, what is it, ACAE or whatever that might be, and write your own, and then put ACAF and have the other records portion there. You don't, if it won't fit in this.
Well, in that particular paragraph, I had several changes upon request, only one change per school year. I had a question or concern, like when it comes to healthcare, if a student would have a seizure, allergy reaction, and an ambulance is called, an insurance, and they're going by a different name than what their legal, how does that work? Because I understand that high school has changed ID cards, correct? So how would that work? I
So
haven't
we have
read it on
changed ID
seizure day.
cards, but anytime we have a medical emergency, we have a protocol. And one of the secretaries immediately pulls the summary sheet from Infinite Campus that has the photo on it. So the nickname would be indicated on there, but the child's legal name would
Legal
be on
name,
that
so
summary
as
sheet.
far
And that
as-
goes with EMT, any emergency medical personnel that comes.
Okay.
What about some sort of record request or needs of those records in the future after maybe a student's graduated? Say they're in school and have had these, had this, okay, I'm going to change my name, but then they decide after they got out of school that that wasn't the right thing to
They
do,
wanna go
and
back.
change it back. How hard is that after the fact, after they're gone to change it? Is it just a request to social office?
Well, it depends. There's a lot of discussion among legal attorneys, whether you talk to Tom Mickus or MSBA, about trying to work with our student information systems to have a screen in front of a screen, basically a nickname screen, if you will. Currently, we just have one screen with all the information on there, so regardless, irregardless of what they go by, it will pull up that student.
And I mean, if they
file.
legally change it, that's one
By
thing.
legally,
That's-
yeah.
But I
that's
mean, if they
a
want to
court
change
order,
it,
what,
just.
$25, a court
Yeah.
order, get that changed for you.
I'll
But until
charge
that
you $500.
happens, they go by the
Not
nickname.
$25.
Okay.
I'll do that for $25.
Yeah. For our perspective, from the administrative perspective, we really need some direction on pronoun usage, and we need direction on as far as how you want us to handle name changes. That's imperative that the board talk about that. So that's the most pressing, next to the bathroom, locker room issue that we have to deal with.
And like you said, there's nicknames in there. I mean, unless we have a legal change document, okay, I'm changing my name from Joe to Joellen, there should be no reason why you wouldn't be able to put that pronoun, okay, they want to go by Joellen,
Mhm.
but their legal name is still Joe. I don't see why that would be an issue. Unless you,
Yeah.
Formerly known as.
Yeah.
I think part of
AKA.
their issue right now, though, and what I think that we need to consider is who makes that call.
Mhm.
And I think, in my opinion, the parents have a fundamental right to make that call.
Sure.
And if the parents say, you're not going to do that, as hard as that is maybe on our staff, I think that's what we've got to do. And I think that's one of the directions that they need. is
Correct.
that we need to memorialize someone.
Well, if they're under 18, that's just like anything else.
Well,
The
and
parent
what
makes that
about the
decision.
shady area of like 17 to 18?
Well, it's an interesting question in Missouri, it really is.
I know it is.
I think though, when it comes to most of the things that we're going to consider from a school district standpoint, 17 is still a minor. Now, they go commit a crime, they're an adult. But for all other purposes, they're still a minor.
Well, I just knew that as teaching, there were many students that were emancipated under the
Correct.
age of 18.
Yes.
If the proper, paperwork, I'm not sure exactly
You're right.
if they could.
Or if you
prove.
have wards of the state, if you have
Right.
unaccompanied minors, if
So
you
it
have homeless kids, there's a
wasn't
big
black and
gamut
white.
here
The-
of where that parent might not be in that student's
Right.
life.
They're going to have some legal guardian most of the time.
Correct.
It's the homeless ones that don't, and I'll tell you, on the Northwest Chamber Board, so mostly dealing with Northwest students, Grandview, and some others last year on our scholarship applications. We had 8 kids that were seniors that lived on their own.
Mhm.
So, they don't necessarily have legal guardian there, so that's something we got to consider.
And in our experience, gender is becoming a divisive factor. So if the student and the parent aren't agreeing on things, we do have a couple of students who have moved out of their parents' home, and under a Kenny event typo, if it's irreconcilable differences, then they are to be classified as homeless. So that complicates things.
My opinion is if you got a legal guardian still that's telling you, you do it one way, you got to do it that way.
Mhm.
I agree. So based on these, the MSBA ones that I'm looking at the moment, on page 2 and 3, bottom of 2 where it starts records, and it basically finishes up that part of the policy, I suppose. Is that what we're looking at then, as to putting into this JO policy, and does that include everything that you want to include, or does it still need?
I have one change per year.
Yeah, well, I think that last paragraph that Beth's talking about, I think we need to talk about that
Okay,
a little bit. And, it reads, district records regarding gender will reflect the gender provided by the parents, guardians, and student may be changed upon request. If it's a one-time-a-year restriction, and again, as long as, in our other policies that we're, in my opinion, that sex and gender in today's world are different things. And we're going to use them, for different purposes in policy. And if we're talking about reflected gender in records, then I'm fine with the request.
I don't have a problem with that.
Are we still talking about limited to one,
I
or?
would want it
That's fine. You don't want them.
every month.
Oh, is that a problem? Is that something that happens?
It's
They
typical.
change
I don't know that it
it
has been
once?
here,
Yeah.
but I can show you. I can show you situations around the country where it has been.
And they just can't make up their mind, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we're talking teenagers.
I suppose.
And it's-
So how confusing do records get if they request one each year? And in the records, there's
Well, we still
5
make,
different names.
no, there's not, it's the nickname. we
Oh,
change,
nickname, okay.
Not
Not
the
the
individual record. Which goes back to what you were saying, because you allow,
Alias.
Jonathan to be John, you have to be careful,
Yeah.
are you gonna let John now be Joel? That's, if you allow a nickname, you have to allow a nickname, that's ultimately what that boils down to.
As a teacher, we allow nicknames all the time.
Sure, yeah.
Doesn't make any difference, first day of class, what do you want to call?
Unless you have a parent saying.
Butch.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so that second to last paragraph, I guess, is that what you said? You made suggestions, were you able to get any of those thoughts?
My question is are we talking about the attorney comments on pages 1 through 4? Or are we actually talking about the version of the policy? that
I'm
we're
talking
reading?
about records on page 6. I don't know what she
Yeah,
came
see,
up
I
with.
was on
Well, that's right. I think she was looking
Sorry.
at attorney
I was-
comments too.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was a little confused on that.
I'm sorry.
I knew where I
I
was.
was too.
I was the same place where Beth was.
That's a scary thought.
But I knew it wasn't page 2.
Well, I tried.
But I knew I was records.
I was on the
Well,
front
that's what
part
I
of it.
thought too, but I wasn't sure.
I'm sorry.
You're okay.
Okay, so there were what were your suggestions again? Because we need to get that verbatim written down.
I think.
Well, I see nothing wrong with the paragraph as is, with the addition may be changed upon request once per
For
year,
one, okay.
per school year, or
No more than.
no more than,
That's
right,
what I was
whichever.
saying.
And like you said, no more
Okay,
than.
but which paragraph was that in?
The very district
The last
record.
one?
Records, yes. Very last sentence.
Mine says changed upon request, I think putting two changes.
May be changed upon request no more than.
No more than, so you.
No more than
okay.
once.
So that
Once
on
per
page
year.
6, no more than one time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Per
year.
school year.
Per school year.
I would like to say per.
Now, are we gonna say school
Okay.
year, are we saying calendar year, or school district year? That's
I would have.
January to
I
December,
see.
Yeah, I
is
would
that
say-
June to, or is that August to May? That's
August to May,
one school
August
year.
to May.
So school year, yeah.
So
Yeah.
once
School year.
during the school year. And what
By
kind of
August
request
1st.
would it be? Written,
Yes.
oral?
Yes, it's
Written.
pretty much.
Okay. So do we need to put that in there as well, a written request?
Once during the school year, submitted in writing to, and then pick who you wanted to go to.
Who does the request normally go to? The
Would
Well-
office?
it be registrar? The
I would say
building
central
principal?
office. I would say central office because anything like that goes to the registrar, comes up to our office anyway.
Okay.
If a student's homeless or McKinney Bento, any of those qualifying factors, we have to sign off on.
And this, the paragraph before did say parents, guardian, and student.
Do we need to specify, clarify the age issue in there as well? isn't that addressed anywhere else?
And was 18 with
Or how-
parent
I
or
mean,
guardian?
however, because there's other issues without them being 18. I mean, like we said, homeless or,
So the written request by the parent or guardian?
Well, that's what this says. Well, it doesn't say written, but.
It
in
says,
the
yes,
second
provided by
paragraph.
the parent,
guardian to the
guardian.
student. But like I said, do we need to specify that age bracket that we were talking about? If they're a minor, parent or guardian, if they're not a minor, or if they're emancipated or homeless, or the other caveats that Dr. Freeman mentioned earlier, do we need to specify that and spell that out too?
Well, if you go back to page 5, okay, and I'm not exactly sure where to put this yet, but at the bottom of page 5, the last full paragraph,
Yep.
where it talks about accommodations,
Yep, that's it.
Uh-huh.
I think that's language that,
Yes.
That we can use.
and I don't, you guys have the yellow, yeah, okay.
The
Yeah, that's-
problem, Derek, the problem with that is it's under a subheading, and I think that needs to be an overarching.
I agree. That's what I said, I don't know where to
For
put
everything
it.
else that falls under it, because once you get to names and pronouns, it does not go back to
Right.
with parental permission, guidance, or whatever. And I think that needs to be its own topic, and everything should fall under that, so that we are very clear that this is with parental permission.
Leave this here.
So that should kind of be first, right after definition.
That's my
That's a good
opinion on
idea.
that one.
All you have to do is leave that paragraph there and give it a title heading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would be, what title do we want then for that?
I hate to use the word eligibility, but it's basically.
Qualifications.
Qualifications,
You know,
eligibility.
would it make sense to take the stuff we're talking about now and just make a new, and we're still mostly talking about records and reference and how students are referenced, but just to make a new policy. To put
Sub-policy under JO.
probably by JO, you know.
J1 or-
JO2, 1, JO, whatever. And, I don't know what you call it. But I mean, we're essentially talking about control of, you know, student information or I don't know what you call it. I'm open to thoughts there. Okay, that makes sense. Just take a separate
That has
policy that
to
talks
be-
about,
That has to be the overarching
I mean, the theme of that is who
policy,
controls
so
this
that
information.
everything that falls under that, every subheading that falls under that is directed back to that, so that we are very clear that
Who
these
makes that
decisions are
decision?
only made with parental consent, guardian consent, or because the student falls under some other exception.
So you,
If that's what the board wants to do, I think we need to be very clear that it has a cross-reference mentioned to see whether you go with bodily privacy, if you go with transgender, if you go with
Right.
whatever, because you're separating these out. We need to make sure that when whoever reads this online knows you must go here for clarification. I think that's important to
That'd
know.
be the definition.
Or people will not look at it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
That'd be under the definitions
Right.
of
If
JO.
you just do the
anyway.
definitions here, they
Sure.
are, make sure that you also read policy ACAE or whatever policy you want it to be.
so we want to create a completely separate policy then for all of these record details.
Either that or come up with a legal phrase that goes into that references the parental consent, parental permission.
Thoughts? What do you guys think?
You put parental consent up underneath definitions, that goes with the entire policy. Typically, MSBA will do that, so you know,
That's what I was gonna say.
as outlined by parental consent. And you have, right here in definitions, you have accommodations, gender assigned at birth, gender identity, whatever you choose. Then you can put outline parental consent. This is what parental consent means in reference to this policy. The reason we say this, and I think this is what you need to keep in mind, parental consent for that is different than parental consent for this.
Correct.
Parental consent for my child to go on a field trip
trip.
is different than this. So we have to be very careful when you go putting them in two different policies, how parental consent's defined in each policy. This is kind of a conundrum.
Well, and that's why I think
that's-
this fits under like a records type policy, and whether it's in JO or JO1. You know, I like that though. I think you can, in the definition, say, here's what parental consent is, and then talk about,
Well, can you clarify it according to policy, according within this policy or policy JO or whatever?
So we can-
that they know it's not.
Yes, we can take
conflicting.
JO and say, as defined in this, but I think it's going to be, if you add everything to it, is my question. Are you wanting to add to JO, or are you wanting to have a sub JO-1? Another policy is what I need to ask.
what if, in this, again for discussion, what if we called it JO1 or whatever, and called it student information? They were talking about the information about that student and who controls it. And then there may be a better term.
And I mean, and yeah, I was gonna say
Directory
with-
information already.
Directory information.
You have directory
It's a little
information, which is different.
Student identification. And this is how you ID the student. I don't know.
I like that one better than
Mhm.
the other one, but.
What are we're wanting to, I mean, student identification muddies the water too, because we have
Yeah.
student identification. I think what we need to do is determine as a board, what do you want? What do you want this policy to say and to do? And that way, then from there, we can work to a title.
I think what we're talking about
Yeah,
is
but
covering
it's accommodation.
this, you know, the parental consent portion, you know, the parental control, the records and the names and pronouns. Because those are the things we talked about that need a place to live.
Something like student records accommodations, something
Yeah.
you're accommodating,
Yeah, that'd be all
and how
right.
you will accommodate student records.
I can live with that.
That would work better, because then it would be separate.
Right, and you have it separate from student records. This is accommodations for student records, or student information, or, there's a plethora of things that could fall
Well,
under.
accommodations actually even list accommodations right there in the first sentence.
Right.
Paragraph that we're looking at anyway.
Mhm.
And
I mean,
it's in their
that's-
definitions as well,
Fits.
but it,
It really does.
so that would be, the accommodation policy would be the JO1, is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, whatever they want to call it. I don't care what you call it.
I'm just gonna put a JO and then write sub down here, subcategory, they'll figure out what they need
Okay.
to be.
Really
Yeah.
good title.
MSBA,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
And so, make sure Beth Ann and I are clear. We're looking at the bottom of page 5, where it talks about consultation with parents, guardians, and students. Okay? And we're going to run that all the way through names and pronouns. And that's going to include, are we cutting out privacy out of that and just using records, names and pronouns, and just the general introductory paragraph there?
I'm good with that.
Losing privacy.
Right, where would we?
Well, privacy really is not going into the
It's not a
records, the
record
names and
issue, yeah.
pronouns, or,
So that would be in
We're losing
the
transgender
AC.
word.
That's what we're getting rid of the
Right.
transgender word all the way
Okay.
through.
Yeah, good, okay.
All right.
Because as you read through this, is it not for all students?
Yes,
Yeah.
it should be, it should be.
Have we ever had parents come and want to change a boy's name to another boy's name? That sounds weird.
Well, you know, we get
Well,
it.
a kid grew up Steve,
Well,
but he always
I
liked
had
his
a
middle
student
name.
that
Yes.
that
Well,
happened.
Wouldn't be changed to
my son's Aaron Drew, and so some call him Aaron, some call him Drew, but he is, well, it's his legal name though. It's not like going from Rob to Fred. I don't know anyone's ever done that. Have
We
you
had
had
a
any
female
kids?
student who transferred to our school. I do not remember her, I can't say it anymore, it's identifiable, but her first name had been the cause of some bullying and harassing in her previous school. So they requested that we go by a nickname when that was last school year.
And you'll see that in abuse situations occasionally, or adoption situations, or pre-adoption situations. I've had folks that can't get something done at the beginning of the school year, but you're gonna get it done like a month later.
Well, if that's the case, then this is more like what we were talking about, not making it specific to.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, that's why we.
All right, so we're removing everything transgender from this JO sub policy. beginning with consultation with parents and guardians, taking out privacy, and using records, names and pronouns, and ending that policy there. And we're going to add, once during the school year, submitted in writing to the office of the superintendent or central office.
And drop transgender.
Yes, I did
Yeah,
note that.
yeah.
Okay.
But dropping transgender out of those
We
categories.
go to students.
So we're gonna piece it.
Okay, so with that, you've dealt with records, names and pronouns, and who can change.
On the parental consent issue, and I think that you may, we talked through this, so you may do that in a definition and call it parental consent.
Yes.
And then, but there's a couple things in there I think we need to consider. Do we, okay, the district will only consider accommodations. Do we add in here, since we're talking about records, accommodations in the student records as requested or discussed?
Well,
Or do we?
not necessarily, because he or she might not be in the student record,
Okay.
because it's a pronoun.
You're right. Then, the other thing, the only thing I don't like about the language is, beyond that, is the last sentence. It almost seems to require consultation with the district's attorney.
Okay,
I don't mind if that's an option.
okay. We have the word
May
after,
consult.
so we can just take that word after, and right directly, but may consult, the district may
Yeah.
consult. Okay.
I'm fine with that.
We'll just get rid of the word after consulted. We're going to have to rework that sentence, though.
Yeah, right here, see.
Oh,
I think that was my.
It almost seems to
comments.
require.
Okay.
That's on the bottom of page 5.
Yes. It was also in
Yeah, I remember.
the attorney comments
Uh,
that from Celinda's office that wasn't written by her.
May consult, okay.
I mean, I'm all for paying attorneys, but not when it's my money.
The district may consult.
They make too much money. This one does. Look at that.
All right. Okay, so I'm pretty clear on that.
Okay. Any other
Good.
concerns or questions?
Then,
On the request.
Here. On page 6?
Well, upon request, the district.
I would say under names and pronouns, since we're defining parental consent, why don't we, instead of upon request, upon parental consent?
Okay.
District
What
staff.
about in the records then? The same thing where it says upon request on that second paragraph within the records section?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it
yeah.
should read like this.
Upon parental consent. Okay, I'm adding that to underneath records. And then again, our names and pronouns.
And did we,
Upon parental consent.
and then we're
One
striking the word transgender, right? So it was.
Yes,
I think- yes.
Upon parental consent, district staff will address a student
Right.
using the student's preferred name if different than legal.
Now, again, though, question about the issue, if there is no parental figure there, is there a way to word that to where it was?
That's what we're going to put under parental.
Under
That's
the-
still not the
Right.
definition.
Right.
Gotcha.
Under the definition,
Gotcha.
it
Thank you.
says, you know, without the consent of parents, if the student is 18 or older.
Thank you. I
Is
just
not-
picked up there.
Do you have any other questions? Okay.
Or lawyers confuse us.
It's all the wording. Okay, so that took care of
The easy part.
The record
Yeah.
part.
the records part. And we're still including the definitions
Yes.
for accommodations, were we doing that? Because we were calling this an accommodation.
Well, I was going,
That was going to be the sub-policy. isn't it?
right.
That was just the title.
That's just the sub-policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
And it'll have to basically be one definition underneath the sub-policy, from what I can see.
okay,
Yeah, we're just defining parental consent
Yep.
all right,
and covering records.
all right, so we kind of
The
taking care
general
of that.
question, is there any place in all these policies that things are repeated, or is it just simply a cross-reference? You guys
Well,
read them
as you
more.
remember, like last year, they started trying to get rid of those policies
Right.
that, and started trying to clean them up.
Duplicated.
But yes, ma'am, and some of them, they are duplicated in wording. So when Beth Ann and I sat down and typed this up, sent it to them, saying cross-reference with all the policies.
Okay.
And that's going to be one of the big issues I see when you talk about parental consent. Parental consent as defined in this policy might be different as defined in that policy. So
That makes sense.
that could be one of the things that MSBA sends back to you.
That's all right, let him send that to you. talking at
Just
the
telling
same
you that you
time.
might need to
This
reevaluate
is
that.
not-
And I mean, can't you have parental consent for purposes of this particular, can you spell that out in there?
Right.
I
I
would
mean,
think
where
so.
that
Why can't we
doesn't
spell it out?
become an issue. Parental consent for purposes of this particular policy means X, Y, and Z. All other policies not the same. However,
Correct.
That's not
And that's
word,
why
so-
you were doing the definition.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Alright.
So there, even if it's in the fact, there should be no
They
issue.
shouldn't send it back, it's
Yeah.
Well, they'll,
specific.
they'll review it if they have a concern about
Just
how it
like
relates
anything
to
else.
us, you know, but I
Exactly.
think we're okay that way.
Okay, so that takes care of a portion of it, but now we need to get to the privacy section. And the academics, even the extracurricular and so forth, the other
See, this policy.
the other categories.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
why don't we just progress through the MSBA one?
And then we
Make
can add,
adjustments.
plug in, delete, whatever.
So we'll
like
have
we
some
did.
kind
Good
of
job.
continuity here.
Because
Yep.
this one, your accommodation in his option one for students desiring greater privacy, that kind of goes along with the privacy paragraph on page 6. Is that correct?
The bathroom and locker room.
With the privacy and the bathroom and locker room. Goes, right? Is that what it kind of goes?
If you're looking at page 6 of ACAE, from MSBA, I think the privacy there was really talking about the privacy of records, which we really,
Could put in
JO
there.
kind of covers, it
Yeah, we're down at
says,
the bathroom.
under directory information.
Locker room access.
So we're going to just eliminate that privacy paragraph on page 6 then?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's duplicative of the directory information.
Okay.
That's
Stuff
educational versus
in JO.
physical privacy. I think.
Yeah.
There.
Without written permission, there's the section about that. Okay, so then we get down to the bottom of page 6 with bathroom and locker room access. Okay, ask your question.
I need just a clarification here. I think privacy, as written here, was with regard to records, but also with staff need to know.
Mhm.
Do we need to consider any of that? Because there'll be some staff that don't need to know. Do we need to have that listed within the records component of this? Right underneath where it says records, like that last, district may provide student, staff, and public education information. That's really not the issue. What I'm reading is privacy rules applying, need to know of other staff. Is that something that we need to address? Is everyone okay with it not being in there?
I don't think we need to, because what we've said is, what we've covered so far is the records. We've said, if you want a different name, here's how you're gonna do it. If you want a different pronoun, here's you're gonna do it. And if you're going by a different name or pronoun, I think that what staff wouldn't need to know that?
Self-explanatory.
Correct?
That would be my question. So I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
Okay, so you're good?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so we're still back down to the bottom of page
Page
6.
6. We're gonna get off this back.
Oh,
Question?
if you have a question, ask it.
Please.
Or with regard to need to know, you're right, if someone's changing their gender status or they're gonna have a different name, you're right, most of the time, everybody would know. But does that mean everybody's okay? I mean, it could be that that student has only asked those teachers that they're on 7 hours with to refer to them as that name. So we wouldn't necessarily, they don't have access to that, so we wouldn't necessarily, I'm just trying to make sure that our ducks, as the administrators should have to enforce this, I'm just making sure.
I don't, if you're asking for a name change or preferred to be called, I don't think that you can say, I want you to call me this, but I want her to call me
Right,
that.
But I'd
I
like
want-
to keep it private with this audience, but not that.
Right, I don't
do that.
think you,
Yeah.
I don't think we can get into that because it would be every student has
Nightmare for
7
you
voices.
guys.
I get that now.
I think if they go with it, they go with it.
All or none.
I maybe.
Because that's basically all we're addressing there is
Right.
the names and pronouns. And if half of us call you one thing, the other half calls you something else.
Some of us go by many names,
Someone would be confused.
and some not as
It's
positive.
like they
as
haven't
others.
really committed to it then.
Right.
I suppose. Okay. Down to the nitty gritty.
She really wants to get to the bottom of page 6.
I know.
Yes, we're gonna get-
Third time's a
We're
charm.
going to do it. Okay.
Whip it into shape there, Ms. Wilbur.
So
Go,
let's,
go.
let's get into the bathroom and locker room access. Okay, we need to iron that out. I mean, I know we've made some accommodations already with the bathroom situations, but
Well, and I think that has to be part of the discussion because, I mean, I think it worked as a patch, but long-term, it doesn't work. I sat there the other day, and I've sought feedback from everybody I can. And I hear the same stories all the time. And I sat there the other day during the pancake breakfast and watched 3 elderly ladies go to the bathroom, and every one of them went to the wrong restroom. Every one. It doesn't work for the public. And you know, and I hear from, you know, some of the students that they avoid it, but then I had and Kathy maybe will shed some light on this, but I had a parent talk to me a little bit about, it's the wrestling match the other day. They had a younger student need to use the restroom. They didn't want him to go use the ones that were marked inclusive, but the lights were off in the ones across from the gym. Apparently needed a key to turn the lights on or something. And, but yet, you know, those others don't need a key to turn the lights on, and so it was really more inconvenient, you know, for the 99% than it was for the one.
If we have any event going on in the gym, the PE bathrooms better be on and ready and readily available. I have a huge problem with that, so that's a different issue, and I'll
Now,
address it.
I was at that wrestling tournament, and when I went in there, the light was on. But if we're gonna cut the number of bathrooms on the floor, so one's for regular use and one is for unisex, it needs to be properly working. And I had mentioned back on November 4th or 5th that I was at play, and one of the urinals had a trash bag over it. Well, that wrestling tournament was a week ago, and it was still covered. And there was a line in a men's bathroom. You had a basketball clinic going,
And all ladies
you
are
had
going,
Yeah.
600
Welcome
people
to
in
the
a 500 or 600 people in a wrestling tournament who are going to be more males than females. So I think it's a problem.
That bathroom there and the kitchen, we've had major plumbing issues from day one when they built the building. I mean, we've jackhammered the floor up, but Roy said he's gonna fix it that night. I'll check and see what's
No,
going
it's,
on.
it's,
My understanding, it's
It's been
open
repaired.
again now, but just,
When I
let me rephrase, it's not been repaired, it's been, they're gonna have to wait till Christmas and pull the
Right.
urinal off the wall, and they've tried snaking it out, trying to clean it out. It flushes, but it's real slow now.
And I understand they're trying to address it, but when you cut the number of bathrooms on the floor in half.
Oh, I don't disagree.
And then you've got that problem.
It just compounds the issue.
Right.
Well, and I think part of the issue with just simply the name gender inclusive, to me, gender inclusive means all genders,
Mhm.
not female inclusive, or, you know, and the picture is confusing. I know what it means because we sat here and hashed that out, but
I did see that sign
Oh, I had-
someplace else in the public, and I can't
Yeah.
remember where, but we all commented, like, look, here's this here.
but
too.
gender inclusive means all genders. It does not mean girls and transgendering or gender identity, female gender identity. I don't know.
Well, it needs to be, no matter if it's school time with the students or public, I mean, it should be a no-brainer. That's-
Exactly.
For me, that's not for me.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to add another sign with the wording. But that was the whole point in picking the wording that was chosen. If those of you on the board remember
I don't know.
that selection process of the words.
I think the easiest thing is that we have boys' bathrooms and we have girls' bathrooms.
Oh, that's
And if
fine.
they don't feel comfortable with that, then they've got the single
Absolutely.
staff bathroom, but I think that just,
And there's not-
This
When
one
you're
is-
talking about
one is
1,200
needs.
students versus 1 to 3 or 4 or 5.
and I understand
Yes.
the wording of the board's got to look at 100% of the students, and I think offering that bathroom for them
I
is
agree.
looking out for them.
I
Right.
agree.
And if it's not good enough, then is there other intentions involved in the dispute?
Well, we don't have like a family bathroom or a unisex bathroom in that
Area,
commons area by the gym or anything, correct?
No, they're all multi-stall bathrooms.
And so the single
Why we went that was 'cause it
restroom
local.
was way down at the other ends of the hall or upstairs,
Or through
is
the-
that right?
There's several upstairs, and then there's one in the faculty restroom, but you have to be able to access the office, and we oftentimes lock the
Right.
office for other events.
And that's why that one was selected, because it was centrally located.
There's one down in the 300 Hall, the Fine Arts Hall, but that is part of a child development lab, so it's not really accessible to the public.
But haven't we talked about like a family bathroom too, where dad could take in his daughter to change a diaper or something?
I've asked, yes, and we have gotten changing stalls.
stations.
Do we?
Changing stations, but those are gender-specific restrooms.
Because the policy in here talks about unisex facilities, and those, we don't really have those open in the front area. They're
Right.
far at the other end, and during games, sporting events, or other functions, the hallways are locked off or closed off.
Yes,
Right.
except for those by the line.
And I'm glad you brought up two things. One, and I was reading 80, the policy from Alliance for Defending Freedom, that talks about a restroom designated for females or designated for males will be used by that sex. See, one thing I want you to consider is if you have sporting events with multiple schools, a boys tournament, you might have to use the girls' locker room as a changing station for the boys.
Correct.
Therefore, you now violated ADF here. Another thing to consider is everything that you do is going to be district-wide, and we don't have the same restrooms at the junior high that we have at the high school. So we have to think broad scope, not just specifically to the high school in general.
And that was the question I had, is there unisex restroom in each of the buildings?
And, no, I know that in junior high, right, Mr. Allison, we just have that one that we use for the faculty and staff.
We've got 2 male restrooms, 2 female restrooms, and then a male staff restroom and a female staff restroom. Technically, we have a very small restroom inside the nurse's closet.
Make closet within closet.
I could not fit it in. I'll just leave it at that.
So junior high, no. Intermediate?
Yes.
Yes.
They have
Those are the latest buildings.
staff restrooms, they're single stallers.
Elementary?
But one that's close to the
Uh,
gym.
In the hallway.
Elementary has them in the hallway,
By
yes,
gym.
thank you,
Gym, down the
Mrs.
hall.
Laban. Right outside the principal's office, there are 2 faculty restrooms that we say are unisex because
Primary?
male or female use them. Oh, excuse me, that was the primary.
Oh, that's primary.
That
At
was
the
the primary
elementary, when you
one.
walk in the front doors, you turn to left like you're going to the gym.
It's right
Yes,
there.
it's right there on the right.
And then there's a
Correct.
nurse's restroom that's also.
So
And
junior
we have
high
a
is
nurse's
the
restroom at the end of the
only
office.
issue.
The
high
primary
school.
has.
Thanks,
couple.
Keith.
You guys can vote to build us an addition.
When we build the new building.
Start on that, put that in that policy.
That take your rate on it.
Okay.
I was
Put it
going
right
to
under
say,
307.
before or after the
Put it
science,
in a
that's it
science
tomorrow.
So is the problem with the high school with the single bathroom, is that
Not.
just after school hours when the halls are locked?
I would think so. They're available upstairs, and the nurse's office is available, and those are all during the day.
But our gender inclusion, what we are concerned about is our student during school hours, correct?
Correct.
Why can't you put a placard up that you slide in there
In the
during school
evenings,
hours in the
yeah.
evening?
We've done that with paper and marker. Men's, women's.
Just, you have another placard, build a little frame, you can slide it in during. Or you're gonna have to define what that means for our public. I was at the band concert on Sunday at 2 in the afternoon, and I didn't see, I was standing right there, men were using it, but I didn't see any.
A
I
learning
mean, there,
process.
a lot of confusion, but I guarantee you there has been in the past, especially with all kids. And it's our visiting public, I think, that also has an issue.
Both signs are
They're the
identical,
visitors.
which is the problem.
Yes,
Right.
there you go.
Would it help, that was my question, when we use the term gender inclusive, because we didn't want to use the word unisex or, we didn't want everyone to be able to go in there. So what if we just put male over the male inclusive restroom and female over the female inclusive restroom?
Like male inclusive
So if you
female.
are
That's
male or you
helpful.
identify as male, you go to the male. If you're female or you identify as female, you go to female.
Because
And
right now,
that's what I
like-
did for the first 2 days that the signage was on. I just
Right.
stood there and I said it verbally.
Right.
Like Mr. Good was saying, I've
And
seen
the
the people
kids
go
used
and they
it.
look, and we obviously know
The
which one
picture's
because
same,
we're
but
used to
the
it.
picture's reversed.
The
Are they
picture,
reversed?
yeah, it's male,
Yeah, but
It's-
transgender.
I didn't even realize that. They
and
don't,
female.
they don't know
transgender.
which, they
And
look
I
identical.
think that's a
when
great
you-
idea, identify it
Simple.
male and.
Just male or?
But the reason I think that went that way is that some transgender individuals, you have female, male, that's why they went with the picture. If I remember right, that's when the board talked
I
about it.
don't.
We were confused. Too
I don't
late
know
at
if it's a
night.
quarter.
Well, it was late, and I think we were just,
We needed
We're
a
trying to come up
solution.
with something, yeah, I
And
don't.
we didn't like what we were hearing.
That's an easy fix. Either male or
Yeah, we can do
I
male
mean,
inclusive, we do
is that-
female inclusive. But that means our visiting public's still gonna have inclusive restrooms, unless you want them to revert back to male and female
But you-
in the evening time.
I mean, the students that I've talked with, doesn't seem to be an issue,
But
once they have it figured out. And in the public, I mean, I have been in public restrooms and I've been very aware of appearances and, yeah, I know very sure that that was a transgender
Could we put
person.
a sign up that said more restrooms located, so that people would know that they have a choice? Like people, the public I'm talking about, not the students, they would know.
But if there are single stall restrooms that are available during the day, then why are we even having the conversation?
That's my
I mean,
question.
I would just assume go back to
Well,
sex assigned restrooms.
I'll
Boys and
answer
girls.
that because of the meeting from hell, okay? The purpose or the goal was to make the restrooms equal. That if we identify a gender inclusive or a restroom for transgender student being just simply a one stall and regular students at a 6-stall restroom, that was not equal. That was the explanation. And so that was our,
In my mind, though, if you have 1,200 students versus your 5 or 7,
Now you
still
need
that's
right
giving
now.
them an equal amount.
Right.
and
They
I,
only need one, where the other 1,200 need 6. And I'm not trying to be hateful, I'm just saying, the other 1,195 students need a voice.
and that's where we all were at that point, and that's why I answered your question
Yeah,
as to
and-
why. And this one was a central that we didn't have to have upstairs, downstairs on each end of the building. It was a central one to make it.
And I do understand
You know.
that. I do understand not being centrally located, but
And I think the perspective that evening was to accommodate the students that had an issue or concern in using the
Yeah,
restroom with
privacy.
transgender students, that they wanted to have more privacy. So we went with the individuals, I think that's right, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the whole goal at that time, was to accommodate the individuals, the students that weren't comfortable, but they were comfortable going with other females or males. And then those that even wanted more restrictive privacy could go to the single-stall unisex, I think was the whole conversation.
And I'm not
emphasis
criticizing, I think it
no,
was a
I'm
good
not
patch.
either, I'm
I'm
not
just saying that
criticizing.
going forward, I think that we need to reverse it.
for sure.
I do too.
I mean, we made mistakes in the past.
And will in the future.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna go away. Maybe
It's
we
not.
look at future budgets of adding an additional single bathroom or whatever.
Well, we have the bond issue coming up, so that's probably be the hot topic to get it.
Because you couldn't do this plan with the junior high anyway.
No,
No.
we couldn't.
So,
And I mean, I've been talking to other school boards, they're kind of waiting on our decision.
Oh, yeah, they all are.
And I asked Sunday, I said, so what would be, he said, heck no, tell them to sue us, tell them to do their funding, we'll take them to court, we'll fight it out in
Yeah.
court.
I went to board training last week and had 8 different districts come to me.
You were important, weren't you?
You
You were.
Yeah, I was really.
You're popular.
I've been there, done that.
I was really proud of that,
And you-
saying that they were waiting to see what we did.
They are.
And I think we need to lead the way and get it right.
Do it right.
Let me read a couple quotes from some things.
I was ready to vote for WC, but I was there.
Justice Kennedy, in,
Very much ready.
in a case recently said that, control of our schools is one of the most traditional areas of state concern. One of the most sensitive areas of human affairs, and federal control of our schools is contrary to our traditions. And, I'm a firm believer in that, and I think that most of our constituents are. Justice Kennedy went on in another case to explain that Title IX of the Education Amendment 1972 forbids disparate treatment only if it's on a basis of sex. And the statute's very clear. It never uses gender. It talks about sex. 1975 regulations expressly authorize the providing of separate toilet, locker room, and shower facilities on the basis of sex. And he went on to say that sex is a biological reality. And I think that we're all on that same page. And as we've had time to step back and reflect on it, I think that's the direction we need to go.
Another green one.
Derek, let me ask you a question, just from a legal standpoint.
Yeah.
With how the bathrooms are set up now, reversing back from that, do we stand, is that harm, hurt, do nothing? How does that look?
I no matter what we do,
Yeah, no,
I
without
think
doubt.
you're
Without
obviously
doubt.
open to criticism.
Sure.
I think that if we do a reversal, if we adopt policy I've suggested, we might be asking for trouble. I'm not going to tell you that
No.
they're not coming.
Without a doubt.
But, and that's why I wanted to hand out that memorandum, is because it talks about the extensive steps
That's what happened.
they're going to happen before we lose. Now, understand, and I think we looked at it, 2.5 million? Ish.
2.2.
Okay. Of our funds, or Title IX funds, right? And it would be
Federal
affected,
funds.
federal funds could be
Federal
affected.
funds.
So, that's a chunk. I think we figured, what was it, $200 per household, per 100,000?
Per 100.
Per 100,000 valuation.
Per 100.
So,
No.
right,
On a $100,000 house.
it was $200 in taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So every 100,000 in valuation is $200 additional in taxes to make that difference up. I don't know how many of our constituents really willing to take that step, but you know what? We got a lot of things that we have to go through before we have to ask that question.
Yeah, what's the worst case? I mean,
Yeah.
and what's the time frame? You're looking at 3 months, 3 years?
Oh, you're talking
Years.
years.
I mean,
5
Supreme
years.
Court, so I mean.
I mean, God, the one in
And then-
Chicago was 13?
It's already,
2 years ago.
it's already been, and that one they didn't even, gone to
Yeah,
court, but
exactly.
And then they pull it, and when they do pull the funding, I'm sure we have a 30-day fix it.
Oh, yeah,
I
it's-
mean, it's a gamble, yeah.
so in 40 years of Title IX, there's
And
not a
we
single
won't be
school
here at that time.
that has had has their funding
Exactly.
pulled for Title IX violations.
All right, let's do it.
Now, I'm not saying there won't be some headaches, guys.
And by the way, this would have been helpful.
We already had
I
it.
know.
understand.
Yeah, I'm just not, I'm not committing you,
A long time ago.
but thank you for
I
this.
understand.
I'm trying to do it,
And
but I was cut
so,
off.
and we cite, if you guys want to read some of that stuff, we cite a lot of, federal regulations and code in here so that you can kind of see where that comes from. I mean, you understand, before they pull your funding, they have to file a report with the funding committees of both the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate to tell them they're going to pull your funding. Now, they don't have to have the blessing from them, but that does give them, the Senate and Congress, the opportunity to act if they deem it necessary. And there's always, even if you go to the very end, as John said, there's still that 30-day wait period before they can pull it that you have to accommodate. So, I feel much more comfortable on the funding issue, obviously not as much as I've read and with the information you have there. So.
Well, plus the two pre-bills have been filed, that's going to be debated. You know they'll be debated. If they win or if they get passed through the House and the Senate, then that's where the lawsuit will begin. So the district will be, in my mind, protected when that law passes through. Your policy will not have teeth behind with the law, and that's with all policies. As you glance down through, you see all of the laws and the state references that give any policy district has the teeth. And that's the whole issue you have here is where do you stand as far as a district when you have no legal backing from the state or federal government?
So you're going to set up a situation. I mean, I was with some senators and reps today, and probably the lead bill right now is Senator Ed Emery's. I don't have the number on it, but they anticipate hopefully to pass state law this year, which obviously then if will be contrary to what the feds are saying, but
It's not federal law,
it sets us up with with some additional backup.
There are other schools that are reversing these same policies because of sexual assault. Once they did that, voyeurism, and they've reverted back.
Boy, they're gonna be surprised when they see ours.
Meaning what?
What is ours?
Well, they're all gonna follow it. Double curve.
Guys, I'm not a school expert, and obviously this is, I've used a lot of my training, my background to do this research. I haven't done this, as the school's attorney, obviously, but I really like the direction that we're going. What we just did with the records, with like a privacy policy instead of the other. Nobody else has done that yet that I've seen in the state, but I really think that this is the way to go to protect all of our students.
And two, you said, we have some backing with the state too, and I remember talking with Matt, thank you, with ADF that they would also back us up and support us.
They have offered to defend any of the schools that adopt their policy and work with them through that process. Any lawsuits that may happen.
In fact, when I talked with him as well, and he even had said that he would come and help us actually put this together.
He said that.
Yep.
And he will probably be testifying in front of the Missouri House Senate committee when Emery's bill comes, but we're working on arranging that.
So, with all that being said, and he and I had this conversation, does for ADF to help support financially in the legal realm, do we have to adopt this policy verbatim? I didn't think that was the case.
I don't think so. I think what I would do is if we have some tweaks, I consult with them on it.
That's okay. That was my interpretation.
Send it to them and say, hey, what are you guys' feelings about this? What do you suggest? That's how I go about it. Send it to our folks. Say, here's a policy we'd like. Take a look at it, see how it fits. Send it to Matt too, and say, what do you think? And then put the final tweaks on it before we get there.
Well, how long is that gonna take? I mean, we won't have it by Thursday, will we? No, I'm saying for the
It's not
three
gonna be by
readings.
Thursday.
So we're looking at
Put it
March.
together, send it to MSBA, sending it to that, that'll probably take us past into January, I would guess.
It depends. I mean, MSBA has gotten policies in the past turned around quick. Since it's just one, maybe, but I wouldn't expect it to happen
By Thursday.
Not
But
by
it can
Thursday, no,
happen.
but by
I just think
January.
I think it'd be appropriate to have it done before the election,
Oh, sure.
or the 3 years, right?
Yeah,
If we can,
So that, because this is the group that did it, you don't want to have
yeah.
any-
someone fall off and.
Right.
Well, we can always call for, now, I haven't looked at our procedure on 3 reads. Can we do 2 reads in one meeting? Do you have to have 3 separate
You have,
meetings?
no,
for
you
each?
have, you have an emergency provision that you can enact any policy at any time. Revoke it, rescind it, or add it, or change it, whatever you want to do.
But aren't we
I would think
not?
with, well,
No.
and I would think with this
So we
one,
gotta finish the language.
especially with this one, yeah, you would want to make sure you, I don't know if you want to do the emergency.
I don't know that you don't have it on here to vote on.
No.
No,
No.
this is just what
So it's possible you can have it back by Thursday for the, you can have your initial discussion, as first read, send it back, and then in January, if you want to have, skip the second and go straight to adoption, you can.
And the only reason I said that is just thinking of the importance, for lack of a better word. You know, do we, I mean, it's important that we get this in there without a doubt, but it's also important that we get it right. So do we want to skip a read and miss something? If that makes sense, so.
And plus, it gives your public the opportunity to speak on the policy as well, and I think that's very important to allow our public that opportunity.
Don't we have quite a few on there already? There's a whole bunch of them.
GCI, GDC, and GCD.
And the other ones are just the other ones are open for discussion. Are they not?
Those are the second final reads.
Because I haven't still had that.
So,
Okay.
we talked about the restrooms, but kind of jump into the locker rooms.
They haven't talked about that yet. Go right now.
So are the,
Well, I like the Bernie in the Marionville, where it's, he uses the locker room, your biological, and if you're, if you have issues with that, then they'll provide a private area in that locker room for you, not in the other locker
In your
room.
other locker room, correct.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
But we have locker rooms that are, sports locker rooms that are not used.
Right. Yeah, so
That
you got
can be
At
that
the high
accommodation,
school.
right?
In the
at the high school, yes.
At the high school.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's.
Mr. Allison, what do you have at the junior high? Do you have any locker rooms that are not being utilized during boys or girls PE?
Yeah.
They're all being utilized.
During boys and girls PE?
Yeah, we use all 3 locker rooms are used every hour unless someone happens to be on prep, but even then,
How hard is, and granted, this is going back almost 20 years, so bear with me. But you got the 2 boys' lockers on the one side, the girls' locker room over here.
yes,
Over here was always a classroom. Is that still a classroom?
that's a boiler room now.
It's a oh, okay. Scratch that bit.
perfect.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So the locker room
so
situation.
yeah, how would that get addressed in the junior high versus?
So, you know, the enclosed changing area, whether that's, I know there's different options, I don't know exactly what they are, but I've read, you know, whether it's curtains or build a little box in the corner or something.
It may not be fair to Mr. Allison, but we haven't had that request at junior high yet.
Sure.
So we put the policy in that says that if
Approach
we
it.
request the accommodations, we'll look at it.
Sure.
Well, and there can be curriculum adjustments as well,
Right.
because there's classes they don't have to dress out.
Mr. Allison?
I will say it's not really related to the transgender issue, but at the junior high age level, we do have some students who feel very uncomfortable dressing out in front of their peers. So I wouldn't say it happens quite often, but usually every year there's somebody in some hour that actually steps out into the restrooms, out
To
into the,
change.
outside the gym, the training room, so that way they can go out there, change in a stall, and feel a little more comfortable.
That's true.
How is the, again, 20 years, how is the shower set up in the basketball locker room, the one all the way down at the end? I'm just trying to remember, you walk in, you get the lockers, you have the office here.
It's just a
We
square
have,
room.
Okay, I mean,
we
could
don't
that be-
shower during PE.
I'm sorry?
We do not shower.
But would that
during-
be able to be curtained off for someone?
It could be, and we do have kids that, again, because of bashfulness more than anything
Sure.
else, will actually go into that area and just kind of duck in there, change, and then pop back out. It's not completely private,
Okay.
but they kind of use that as a way to be more private as opposed to being out in the general.
So there's a possibility of
That-
something.
Yeah, going
for the
along
time
with what
being.
he said, then it would be easy to make that more private if you needed to.
I know in the first one it would be, they both have a shower room in there, so yeah, you curtain that off.
If need be. Again, I mean, because the other building, we have a locker room that we can do that. Yours is the one, of course, that would be an issue with.
But you've got the bathrooms right outside.
They're closer to.
They're right there,
Locker room.
outside the
Right outside the
close
gym
to locker
doors.
rooms, and you've got stalls there, and you've got.
Sure.
So there are some options if that request was made.
Coaches are very flexible with that, like I said, if someone comes to them and it happens all the time and they don't make a big deal about it, the kid just kind of goes in there, disappears for a second, comes back and changes and there
Isn't the first one, doesn't it have like, isn't it storage right now for like archery or something? I seen lots of.
There used to be 2 shower rooms in each of the male restrooms, one on the left, one on the right.
Right.
Currently, there's always, in both locker rooms, there's 1 shower and 1 storage area.
Okay.
Actually, used to be storage when I was there.
So, yeah. So we have options. Yeah. Onward.
Okay, so language though. So are we sticking with page 6, bathroom and locker room access as written? Are we switching to the ADF option 1?
One thing that I think Dr. Corman brought up that I think we need to consider if we go with ADF, and give my preference option 1, we might need to add a C to accommodate those activities like wrestling tournaments and that kind of thing. Give the principal the ability to redesignate, temporarily redesignate facilities or something like that. I don't
For
know.
tournaments or
Yeah.
sporting events or.
So are we looking at all of, where it says 3 policy on ADF, A, and then picking one of the B options? Is that correct, the wording
Yeah.
there under the A, and one of the B options?
Option 1.
I understand, but I'm just saying,
Right.
all of A is to be written in this.
Correct.
Okay.
And so this would be a policy that would be a J policy, it would fall under the students?
I think that it could be J or it could still be ACAE. I mean, it still fits in that general, because you got the non-harassment stuff. It probably fits better, where they had ACAE than it does J, because, you got all the non-harassment stuff there, and then.
I just saw because you've got
Yeah.
student dress code, you've got quite a different things about the students.
Still kind of goes with the.
Right,
rest
but
of
see, if you
it.
look, he just put up there the A policies, and so if you see AC, AE would have fit, just above that, I guess. And so you're talking, you've got all you got the discrimination policy there, and although this isn't a discrimination policy, it's still saying, look, we're going to make these students as comfortable as possible.
Right.
We're not discriminating against anybody, we're taking care of them.
Yeah, these are administrative forms. AF is administrative forms of how we as administrators are to put into effect AC.
Right.
And there are some districts that are just adding to AC. I think that's what Columbia did. When Columbia Public Schools just added to AC.
I think so. Yeah, and there's some that have added language to AC that I would not support.
Sure. I guess the question is, what direction do you have
Back to
for
my
us?
question, we're dropping the bathroom and locker room on MSBA and going 3 from ADF. Option.
And going
Is that right?
I prefer that, but what does everybody else think?
What did you say? We're dropping page 6, but then,
Well,
right.
and then doing policy use of school facilities with option 1.
Where is it? Oh, okay, this page.
All right, so we're
That
going to X
my
out.
understanding. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
And
Is
are
that
we
right?
are we just gonna call this school facilities? Or are we calling this bathroom, locker room access?
Well,
So I'm marking out on page 6 MSBA policy,
Let's
bathroom,
be
locker
more
room access,
specific.
and that paragraph there. And we're gonna take policy from ADF, A plus
B1.
B1, and I'm gonna stick it over here but what are we calling it? Are we still calling it bathroom, locker room access, or are we calling it school facilities?
I would say use of school facilities, because it covers your
Covers everything.
unisex restroom, control of the employee restroom, locker room, shower.
And again, if
I
you've
think
got
it
a,
covers everything.
Okay.
Why-
Yeah, but as an administrator,
Okay, look,
I
Director Good, on
would
page
pick up on the
6.
bathroom and locker room
On page
access
6 of the gold
instead
color in
of
your
use
hand,
of
Right.
the
school.
very bottom, it says bathroom and locker room access. We're taking all that out. We're going to pull
What name are we gonna give
A
this?
and B, option 1, off of ADF and sticking it over there in that section.
So why are we sticking it over there is my question,
Because
because,
that's what I was,
you know, I think that's what the confusion was. We don't,
Oh,
we're
that
not,
whole first part is
we're
gone,
not,
isn't it?
yeah, we're not
That's
keeping a
jail.
transgender, I thought everybody agreed, we're not
Everything's
keeping a
all gone.
transgender student policy. So I
right,
think-
I'm just trying to get it all on one piece of
On
paper
page.
so Beth Ann and I know what to send to MSBA.
So, well, what problems does anybody have with the ADF policy with option 1 as written? Let's talk about it.
I don't have any problem. I don't think it's written.
Okay?
Covers everything.
Again, I think that there may need, we need to tweak a C to give the principal the ability to temporarily,
switch it.
relabel
events.
facilities for,
Okay.
necessary events or.
Sure.
I like how
Well-
it's basically saying, yes, it's on a case by case,
Mhm.
but it still reverts to A, where
Right.
you're gonna use facilities of your biological.
And that's why I asked about that, about the curtain issue, is, if that person in their own locker room of their own sex is not comfortable for whatever reason, they can go behind that.
Yeah.
If needed.
And down the road, there's, you told me there's a school in Kansas City that they've redesigned their bathrooms.
They had a
Where
transgender
each-
female
each
taking
person has a-
male swim class.
Each person, I thought you said there was a school where they're
It
redesigning
is.
where each person has their own.
What they did is similar to if you go camping, some of the camp state parks, you have a shower, and where you walk in and the dressing area enclosed, and you walk right into the shower, which is enclosed all in one long, which is what that school is doing to accommodate that particular course. So this is going to be the new policy,
Well, or
because they didn't want
were
to
we
add
adding
kids.
it?
I think you just call it, I think you can call it ACAE.
Okay, we're going to call
So
it
we're keeping
ACAE.
it the same name? We're
If
just not
MSBA
gonna
will let us,
call
because
it-
that's their transgender policy, they might call it
They call it
ACAE.
everyone. Yeah, they put it in that.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
But we don't want the title that says transgender.
that is correct.
Correct.
I just put ACAE and
Okay,
we'll call it school facility usage, something like that. Let them
okay.
draft it, come back to you, then you can decide what you want it to say yourself.
Okay. So, but then are we still going to go ahead with the classes and academic activities?
Page 7.
Right.
Page 7? I mean, we aren't stopping with this. No, okay.
I don't think.
I didn't think so either, but I didn't know if, I was thinking the same. Because this one didn't address like overnight trips.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
'cause
if you're,
that-
if
I
you're,
had that
if you're
one.
removing transgender, and that's what you're wanting to do as a board, you already have a dress code policy.
True.
Right.
You don't need that if you already have one in your student handbooks and in your board policy.
Does it have, do we,
Need to add the
That
dress
little
as gender
statement
identity
maybe?
though.
But the question is, I mean, I thought you didn't want anything saying transgender, and then your policy's gonna
To me,
say,
gender identity is not transgender.
well, unless you say
I
conforms
have
with the
gender
student's gender
identity.
identity.
Well, I don't think the dress code is sex specific as to, it doesn't say guys can't wear shirts,
Right, it does.
you know? So I
It's
don't
not
think,
distracting.
you know,
Yeah,
if there's been violations of the dress code to date, it's a violation, that would have been a violation whether it was
Male or
male, female, or transgender. So I don't know that it's necessary. And extra
Statements.
activities, Nisha has its own rules.
Right.
They're already in place.
And it says that in this, that
Yeah.
if we give them,
that we're going to follow that anyway?
we're going to, yeah. Do you want-
But does it talk about that specifically?
Mhm.
Yeah, the Nisha rules state that.
12 months of hormone
12
therapy.
months
That's what I
hormone
thought.
therapy.
Mhm.
Okay, because that didn't talk about that. Well, that gets us to the next section.
Well, what about classes and academic activities, Lee?
Just that one.
No, ma'am, not that I heard.
Where's that?
No, the
Top
top
of page
page
seven.
seven.
Top of page 7. So,
Students will be allowed to cross out transgender.
Well, we've already talked about physical education, well, no, yeah.
But to me, if it's a case-by-case situation, wouldn't that be something you
I don't want a
talk about
policy
then?
on it.
no, I don't think so either. But
Scratch.
Yep. And I think you already have this section in
The
AC.
discrimination section?
I believe you do. Let's look for. There's discrimination and harassment. Right
Yeah, because it even references policy AC. I mean, it
Yeah, there's
says-
one right there.
Yeah.
Because we already have a statement about not tolerating bullying.
So there's behaviors, harassment, sexual harassment.
So that's just kind of a repetitive paragraph, maybe.
Want me to scratch that out?
Scratch.
Might be a silly question, but Dr. Freeman, you may answer this. So one of the things we talked about is offering other classes for a student that may not be comfortable, okay, whatever. Are those available to traditional students too?
For
A gym class?
classes?
Yeah.
If you don't want,
Well, I mean,
Accommodations.
typically to graduate, you're supposed to have freshman PE.
Yeah, yeah.
But we make accommodations for pass on a case-by-case basis.
Same thing.
One of
And we
the
do have a
policies
learning center as well.
talked about an online PE course.
Well, we do have.
We
it.
have one.
Yes.
Okay.
I have used it a few times here for
Run in
students.
place for 5 minutes.
I know that works.
We do have it.
I do.
Yes.
It's more healthy, it's more healthy.
It exercises your muscles.
Well, you don't have to stress out.
It tells you what you should do rather than actually having.
What sex-specific classes are there other than maybe some segregated PE?
Choirs. No. What?
No, no.
What was I didn't hear
Just
what you, choir?
So how would that relate then?
It's men's and women's choir, but the state no longer the state no longer takes a stance on that. So if you have a young lady who would prefer to be in men's choir, the state is fine with that, even though it's competitive activity.
Well, we already have that.
They are
Is that
additional.
under, yeah, is that under addition? The cheerleading? Okay. I don't know.
Misha, Pommies,
Yes.
do they, and cheerleading?
Fall underneath?
Those are gender neutral
Those gender
activities,
Okay,
as is color guard.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so
So I don't, yes, I don't know that we need a policy on it. It sounds, I mean, that just seems to have already kind of worked itself out.
In the employee training, we do that annually. To accommodate transgender students. We do talk about discrimination, harassment, things of that nature. I don't know why you would need that in.
overnight trips.
Right.
Which is placement
Where
of
is it?
temporary periods
Well, it wasn't in there. I
It's
didn't-
not in this one.
Yeah, I didn't see that I didn't find a policy that covered that, and I thought about it, and then I
We do have
forgot.
a policy about
It's, in Minkus's, so students will be assigned rooms. On occasion, student activity groups schedule overnight trips. Students will be assigned rooms with sponsor approval, mutually agreed upon by student roommates. The district is a member of, and then it goes into the Misha stuff.
I think that's kind of important.
To sponsor it would be for me.
Field trips and excursions.
That's a statement we put in a different policy. Sorry, still. Where does it talk about overnight?
That's what I'm looking for. But I don't think we have one that says overnight trips.
comments further down. Policies for overnight. Negative.
It's basically, it's a little bit, yeah, that's necessary.
There's, I wonder if that might be on there.
I know, no, I don't either, that's exactly what I thought.
I don't think I'd like to agreed upon by student
By the
roommates.
Oh, I know, I saw that part too, but.
Yeah, I'd like to.
No, I don't think you will.
Actual policy, or is that more the procedures?
I know there's some policy that talks about that. I don't remember which one it is.
That's why I was curious to see what ours says.
It does.
Okay. Okay.
So we're going to subcategory for our jail workers. We worked on that.
The board, way back when, wanted to start voting on overnight trips. Yeah, I mean, there could be a directive.
Did that policy?
I've spoken to some districts that actually, if they had a transgender student,
On a trip?
the parents of the other student, I don't know how they did this without violating someone's rights. They signed off saying it was okay for the child to stay in the room. That was, I think, an Illinois school district.
Well, I think that maybe that's kind of what they're trying to get at
With the student
here.
roommate approval.
Mutually agreed upon by student roommate. But that doesn't cross-reference anything here either. Right.
You see where they rank.
It pays my pension
I'm kidding.
every month. I pay my taxes here, but I gather my money from the state.
Well, since we can't find a policy that it goes with at the moment.
And I can't just ask MSBA to draft one, because they're going to want to know what your wishes are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scratch.
What direction do you want to go? Or do you want to deal with that on a case-by-case basis?
At least we have.
Because, for example, I mean, there are students that are comfortable in rooming with their friend who is a transgender student.
Well, sure.
But you would need parental consent for that, I would assume.
I would think
I would
so.
think.
So would it make some sense to consider, in addition to IICA,
Try this one. She said, see what that is.
Extracurricular groups and activities, okay, IGD. Ooh,
It's touchy.
now I'm lost completely.
What are you looking for?
IGD.
IGD.
Oh. Yeah.
Is it just IGD, Beth Ann?
Yes.
The very top one, says district sponsored.
One, okay, that's
Is there
administrative
any
procedure, that's not it.
Keep
What
going.
about one more?
Yeah, you should, there you go.
There you go.
Right. We're defining extracurricular and co-curricular activities. What's the mouse is touching?
We all took speed reading classes.
Participation.
Keep going.
Okay.
Can you just
All right,
hit search on
athletics.
the website?
That might be a good way to sell it, but what's our insurance say about that? If it say no, then you got to resolve.
Oh, they'll take a stand on
Well, they will certainly not. So in this policy, you just have participation.
Don't all overnight activities come to us anyways?
They do.
Overnight field trips, yes, they did.
Used to know.
Let me look at it in the grade.
So we're gonna have a line that says it's a transgender student, and we said no
No, we just know. Is that time for next group?
And with the
You can
sponsor
make a statement
approval,
in there somewhere.
that puts an awful lot of responsibility on the sponsor with that administrative.
For the teacher.
What do you think,
Whether
Kathy?
they're gonna use it
What's your
against us.
I have a math situation that was going on, I'm sorry, I'm trying to take care of a math teacher.
Math
so-
homework?
No, not homework, no, we're scheduling also, I'm multitasking right now, we're doing second semester schedules. Okay, what was the question?
Well, your opinion as far as the overnight trips,
Oh, I think this is
because, I mean, this is simply a statement, it says with sponsor approval, and that's too much responsibility. As a sponsor, I wouldn't want that.
So,
I think you either,
I guess putting a student in a single room, it would be a big no-no. I do not have expertise in that area, I do
Where's
not know.
coaches?
if they don't have a friend they're gonna room with anyway, they may not go.
And what you don't want to do as a
Somebody's
board is get into that, we want to see the list of the kids going so we
No,
can approve. I mean,
that's
there's
not
no,
us.
I don't know what the best way is to handle that situation.
Perhaps we could just keep it on a case-by-case situation with administration involved, and we will get parental consent for whatever we come up with.
For now, I think that's the way to do it. I mean, we can think about it, maybe we'll come back with something,
Okay.
They'll have to go through you anyway, don't they?
I don't usually get involved in when coaches and sponsors do room assignments.
like athletes, they go to
Coaches,
state or
sponsors.
something.
Yeah, I don't typically, but I mean, I can definitely. We haven't had that situation yet.
Yeah, it's not been we've got to deal with it yet.
Not yet.
We should make it easier not to deal with it.
Mhm, exactly.
I mean, your option is you'll room with your assigned sex. And if you're not, then you have to have a different room.
Don't go.
It's pretty simple. You
But
can do
if
it for
they're not
sponsors
dressing-
all the way down to attendees. All attendees, including school staff, will room with their assigned, we typically are, we do that for our staff. If we take a male and a female, they have separate rooms. But that doesn't necessarily have to be a policy, it could be a directive read into the minutes. There's a lot of ways to conduct that.
well, I think it said, was it, one of those we just looked at said that something about, we direct you to do that.
The designee.
One of them, no, it was to
Superintendent.
set the rules or something, it was either IICA or that IGG they talked about, I don't know which one it was.
Field trips and excursions was the one we were looking at.
IGD.
Yeah, IICA was field trips and excursions. So it's down. So maybe on the other one, is that IGD?
That was the extracurricular activity. IGD.
Yeah, go up.
Kind of afraid to do that now.
Stop.
Superintendent.
Go down. There was something about the superintendent. Go down a little. No, I read it.
Well, I was gonna say the
Second
paragraph.
Paragraph, I think.
Yeah, the second.
At the very top.
The board directs the
Oh, there you go.
superintendent.
Well, I never read someone.
There you
Easy
go.
to cover all.
Directs any procedure necessary for implementation of the policy.
So there's your administrative procedure.
I almost think that it almost needs to be case by case. Because if you got two boys, one is a normal boy and one is a transgender, and they're sharing a room, and the one wears panties and a bra and all that stuff, and
Get a picture going on.
It just sounds like a mess.
But still, technically,
What?
I got a picture going on in my head.
Well,
I'm
but
sorry,
you
but
have-
that's, you know, but
You
that,
have instances where kids may not get along with each other.
Yeah, and you
And you have to
accommodate that.
rearrange your rooming and stuff. So I think that would just be have you deal with it.
I think
It's
that's
right
how it
over
is.
to your
And
head.
also one that
Yeah,
typically
but
when
what
you
we
go on
can
a
push
trip, you're
but
gonna be.
for, in this case discussion, it would be when the boy
And
that
it's gonna
dressed
be
that
assigned
way
before
was
you
in the
leave.
room.
Yeah.
with
It's
the
not like
girl.
you're gonna go,
The boy, I'm not
There's one
disagreeing.
with the clothes.
but we were just saying, you're assigned rooms before you leave, so it's not as if,
Hopefully.
right?
You are.
Aren't you, you know
Yes.
your room assignments before you leave?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
Absolutely.
yeah.
all I was saying
And you
is,
know who you're
is
rooming with.
he had said that, it's cut and dry. If
Right.
you're a boy, you're gonna be in this room. And I still think they need to be in that room, but the whole parent consent, so that the other boys' parents know.
Yeah, I do think you need
You know what I
parental
mean?
consent.
We do a mutual parental consent on, it's not the same thing, but on allowing some students to transport other students during the school day. We have kids who have college. Some days the college doesn't meet. One student drives and has a vehicle, another student does not. Both students' parents have to agree that one student can transport the other student, something similar to that.
I don't think we need policy on it right now.
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe wait till it happens. Okay, so I think that covers all of our issues, does it not? Are there,
Doc, do you have language that you would suggest if we add the C on that ADF suggested policy? About the principal, it's making exceptions? what the
I
rest-
just jotted it down
Okay.
for games, for principals, some, administrative direction on that, and we'll try to type it up,
Okay.
and then it'll come back to you to review. The reason being is I want to make sure MSBA can cross-reference that with other language. But yes, I do have A, B, and then C down here.
okay,
So,
anything else that?
We'll also get this to MSBA in the morning to see if possibly they can cut it, paste it, and get some notes and get it back to you by Thursday.
So we basically
Dream
have,
on.
we have a JO subcategory for accommodations
And an AC.
and an AC
Yes,
policy.
ACAE policy, and you have a JO sub policy. The ACAE is the use of school facilities from Alliance for Defending Freedom using A, which is use of school facilities, B, option 1, and C, some type of provision for games at principal discretion or for athletics activities. Then over here, the JO sub is going to be removing all transgender wording, incorporating definition on parental consent at the top of the policy, which will include 18 and older, emancipated youth, those that are homeless or under applicable law that they would apply. We're going to use everything under consultation with parents/guardians and students at the bottom of page 5. And we're going to add the words, rearrange the very last sentence on the bottom of page 5 to include the district may consult with its attorney or legal counsel. And then we're going to add, leave in records, we're going to add the words upon parental consent and go all the way down to names and pronouns, again using upon parental consent or request. We're going to add once daily. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Make sure you're back there.
First school year.
The words during, I just read it daily. Freudian slip, I
Change the name
apologize.
daily.
Once during school year, submitted in writing to the office of the superintendent or central office. I just put central office. Glad you are paying attention to that, thanks. So, anything else that I need to add or misread?
Sounds all right to me.
Sooner the better.
We'll get it done in the morning, first thing.
Okay. Okay,
I'm gonna throw this stuff
so I guess that clears up everything for now. I need a motion to
So moved.
adjourn. I have a first and a second, and a show of hands. Very good. Beth was first, Eric was second. Thank you for coming.